Okay, so I just finished reading this. This is Superman Year One, Number Two by Frank Miller, John Romita Jr. And if you saw my first review, the one about Superman Year One, Book One, I thought it was okay. It was nothing great. A little at times disjointed, maybe, but I didn't really hate it, but I didn't really like it all that much either. I was just like, let's see where it goes. I mean, I was interested in the concept of Superman joining the military, specifically the Navy, to become a Navy SEAL, and all that. All that really kind of intrigued me and made me want to check out this series when I heard the premise for it. So along comes this, though, book number 2. And one of the things I asked in the first video when I reviewed the first one, or one of the things I was thinking about was, does Frank Miller still have it? Does he still have the ability to tell a really good story? I mean, we're talking about the guy here that wrote one of the greatest Batman stories of all time in The Dark Knight Returns. Reading this, I'm looking at this and I'm just like, is he trying to do the opposite with Superman? Is he trying to write one of the worst Superman stories ever made? Because that's what it kind of feels like. So for those of you that don't want to go through this here, I'll just tell you right off the bat, this is terrible. This is bad. This is not good. This is, and I'll explain exactly how I feel about it as I go through it. But let's just start going through it a little bit here, just so you could get an idea of why it is that I didn't really like this one, or I liked it much less than I did the first one. So of course, joins the military here. So you can see he gets a haircut, breaks like 3 blades. They tell him that's going to come out of his check. All that stuff goes through all the training in the Navy, specifically to become a Navy SEAL, obviously, because he has the ability to be a perfect marksman. And really, he's at the physical peak, and his CEO takes notice of that. And then we get to a point here where he's noticing something, right? So let me just focus in on here real quick. But basically, he's hearing something from the sea call out to him. And the thing is, his CEO knows what he's talking about, although it's not something that they're going to talk about publicly. But he sees mermaids out there, and his CEO confirms, they're real, and there's a lot of things that you're going to see that can't be explained. But they do this whole thing of like, but we never had this conversation. We're not going to talk about this, obviously. We just kind of keep this between ourselves. So one night, Clark decides to go into the sea and confirm it for himself. And of course he does. He sees this mermaid that he falls for. And her name is Lori Lamaris, I guess is her name. And she's from Atlantis. And I guess this is not the same Atlantis that Arthur Curry's from. And the reason for that is because the king of this Atlantis is not Arthur Curry or anybody that I can think of, at least off the top of my head, that's affiliated with Aquaman in any way, shape, or form. Poseidon is the king here. The god Poseidon, yes. So he helps him out here, and he starts a relationship with this mermaid. And I guess they pretty much let you know that they not only start they obviously start a romantic relationship that is intimate. So yeah. And so yeah, he goes about business as usual after he visits her and stuff, and he goes through the rest of his naval SEAL training, and he's the best. Obviously, he's able to do things that nobody else can do, and obviously there's no explanation for it, which is fine. His CEO just sees him as an ultra gifted guy, knows he's not normal, can't explain why, but doesn't really question it. Just knows that Clark is not normal. He's beyond normal, but that's kind of a good thing. It's just like, and that makes him for the perfect kind of soldier. That makes him pretty much be the perfect kind of soldier of what they want, right? So they do this mission, right? Clark ends up seeing one of the terrorists here that they confront. He ends up stopping the grenade that the guy pulls the pin on by just holding it in his hand. But of course, that doesn't reflect too good with his CO, because he could have put the team at risk, because they don't know, obviously, that he's metahuman or anything like that. His CO just knows or suspects that he's beyond normal. And he stops the grenade by pretty much just palming it and just squeezing it and just letting it explode in his hands. So what ends up happening because of some of the insubordination and because of this particular event, he ends up getting discharged from the Navy. So he's out. So what is it that he does? You would think, you get discharged. What are you going to do at that point, right? You're going to go probably find a new line of work. You would think this is where he goes back to Metropolis and really starts his career at the Bugle, right? Or pursues that career in being a journalist or whatever else it is that he feels that he needed to do, or maybe travel the world a little bit more. Nope. He just goes ahead and decides, I'm going to go back to my girl under the sea. So he goes back to the ocean to meet up with his mermaid lover. And what he's trying to do now at this point is basically seek the approval of her father, who is Poseidon. So it's not like a normal courting process here. Apparently he has to go through some trials here, and he's willing to do that because he feels that she's worth it. So he does all that. He goes through these kind of trials that Poseidon puts him through, and Poseidon throws everything he can at him because the way he's looking at it is like, okay, this guy wants to be with my daughter, my favorite daughter, and he's also coming for my throne. Now, Clark, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about any of that. He just wants to be with her. He's not interested in becoming the king of Atlantis or anything like that. He just wants to be with the mermaid girl and have that great, make that sweet, mermaid love with her. Or Superman mermaid love with her, right? So he just goes through everything, all the trials. Poseidon's not down with it. It gets a little bit weird because Poseidon wants his Lori there, who's his daughter, to also end up being his new queen, and basically in every respect, which is kind of gross. He wants her to replace her mother as his queen, so it gets a little bit gross there, a little incestual. Not very cool. I don't care for it. But yeah, he continues to go through these trials, having stuff dropped on him, getting eaten by the Kraken, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And he, of course, walks through all of it because he's Superman, and he could do that. And yeah, and I don't care about any of it. I don't care about not a single bit about it. I think this is all dumb. There's no other way for me to put it other than this really feels like a really bad fan fiction. I don't know what's going on with Frank Miller, what's going on in his head. If this is just something that it feels like something that an angsty teenager would write, like some kind of fantasy that they would have about Superman being with a mermaid or something like that. It's I don't see where all of it is going from here on. I don't care about it at all. It's just bad. It's just really, really, really bad. It feels super disjointed as well. And it's just very bizarre. I don't know what the purpose of starting this feud with Poseidon is. I think it's stupid. It's like I said, I don't care about any of it. I'm not invested in it at all. And if this is the route that this series is pretty much going, I'm pretty much checked out after this book. I mean, I might check out the third one just to see, but I don't know if Frank Miller's having some kind of midlife crisis. Well, I mean, I think he's past his midlife at this point. Maybe he might be a little bit older. But like I said in the title of the last video for the previous review, I put, does he still have it? And after reading this, I think you can probably start questioning that now. Does he still have it? I don't know. I'm starting to lean towards maybe he doesn't. And I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if it's just laziness, if it's just, if he just peaked when he peaked and it's just all downhill from there, if there's ever going to be anything good again. Because when you see some of the older writers, right, like Chris Claremont, he's still capable of writing something good and cohesive. This is not any of that. This is not cohesive. Like I said, felt very disjointed and just it's not good. It's just not, this to me was a real big sludge to read. And there's some inconsistencies in the artwork too that I noticed. There was some in the first one, but I dealt with it. It's weird because there's some more consistency, at least in the way he looks. He looks a little bit more adult, even though he still has that kind of lanky, kind of teenager look to him at certain points. But he does still look more adult in this book than he did in the previous one, where he's goes from being, you know, kid to middle school, where throughout to high school, I should say. And then the thing about it is that he always looks like a kid, like a little kid throughout all of that. And this one, they, you know, John Romita Jr. does manage to make him look more like a grown man, but there are some inconsistencies in the art that are kind of like, oh man, that's not good. And I'll show you. Let me go back. I have to go back a little bit here, but like this right here, right? So he's sparring with this guy. He's training with this guy named Tug. And I'll just zoom in right here so you can see what I'm talking about. See there. So there's Tug. This is Tug. And, you know, he's sparring with him, right? Now, if you notice here, and let me zoom in a little bit more, Tug is bald. He's bald, right? But then over here on the very next page, you know, while he's sparring with him, does another sparring thing with him, all of a sudden, and yes, this is the same character, all of a sudden, now it could be that this took place on a different day, maybe a week after, maybe a month after. Hold on, let me focus in a little bit here. Or it could be same day, I don't know. But all of a sudden, he's got hair on the next page. Now, from the way this is, I assume this is all same day training, or maybe just a couple days apart training. But he's got hair at this point in time. But then again, could have been a month, could have been a couple weeks afterwards. But they don't really say anything about it. It's just there. It's just like one moment, dude's got, you know, he's bald. Next moment, he has hair. And again, some time could have elapsed between it, but it would have been nice to know that if that was the case. If it was like week 1, this is the training. Week 2 or week 3, week 4, whatever of training. You know, they don't specify that, so it's a little bit. It's like, huh? You know, well, how much time has passed by? It's like you don't know, because Clark still looks the same, but this guy's appearance obviously has changed. But you know, that's a minor gripe overall. Like I said, this book is pretty terrible. And again, it makes me wonder the state of Frank Miller. Really, I'm not sure that he's got it anymore. I think his best days are behind him. I hope not. I would love to see. The whole reason for me buying this too, again, like I said, was because when you see all the great work he's done in the past, you know, Batman, Daredevil, and other things, you know, Sin City, things like that, Ronin, and then you get to Superman, which to me he's one of my favorite DC characters, one of my favorite superheroes of all time. And you see this treatment of him. It's like, what are you trying to do here, Frank? Are you trying to be known as, you're already known as one of the guys who wrote one of the greatest Batman stories ever. Are you now also trying to be the guy that wrote one of the worst Superman stories ever? And that's what it feels like. I don't know. But anyways, let me know what you guys think of this in the comment section below. If you have any recommendations, as always, please let me know as well. Be sure to like the video. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Until next time, y'all know how it goes. The hunt continues.